let's get into this. No more waiting. So this is what it is. For the past few days, I've had the opportunity to. I mean, I've had some really good conversation with people that I've known for a while, people I've never known, never had a conversation with, yada yada yada. Well, here's some reality for you. There are a lot of people out there that really never had a conversation with what's going on to have the conversation in the first place. Not taking away, some arguments are pretty decent without any evidence, but it's good conversation. And it's not at the point where I'm having these conversations and whole rooms of flat earthers are just have nothing to say. And at that point comes a very clear situation. Real truther, real wanting and understanding, so we know where we live. It's either there or not at that point. And I'm seeing a lot of it. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go over some of these observations that they're claiming, and the observations that are actually seen, because these things are more important than sitting here going, well, the atmosphere works like this. Do you know what the atmosphere works like? No. Okay, well then how can you have that argument? And that's the reality of it. And I'm gonna get in this chat real quick, because I do see what you said, Fred. Hang on. What's up, Crash? What's up, Cruisin' J? What's up, Brian? Bearded Draft Devil? What's up, Fred? Who else is here? Hey, hello, Amy. What's up, Carl? Sam? Chris, how you doing? Yes. What up, Wingnut? And so Fred Knotts in the chat says, because you are using real maths and science. Yes, those are, real good tools and helpers, but my understanding is what I'm using more of now. And then Gary in the chat keeps saying the horizon proves flat Earth, and he says horizons are just optical limits over a flat surface, whether the observer's angle of view is too narrow to delineate the water. No, that's just fundamentally wrong, completely. Oh shit. The link is in the bunker now, guys. Sorry about that. And for all you know, the link to the bunker that I keep speaking of is basically just a spot where I can send the links to anything I want, not really care who gets it there. So, if you want that, hit me up an email. If I should have already put you there, then I'm sorry. That's all there is. What up, Jay? Hey, Jay Alex, stay here, man. You're gonna love this announcement. What up, B-Ball? Oh, so let me just get into it before we get into the fun part. So, for the past, I'd say, 2 weeks, I've been just hanging out and kind of playing a mod in a server that's kind of what we call in the Discord side a dead server. But there's always people, coming in and doing what they do. And I realized right away that I was the only moderator there, only person that can roll anyone up, moderate people, how they talk to people. And I found out who the admin was. And I guess there was a few, but they all didn't mind and said, hey, Sean, you're the new admin of Flat Earth Official. And I'm pretty sure some of you guys have seen it before, but yeah, I'm the new owner of it. I'm the admin of it. I thought it was kind of funny. And now I can do the whole Karen FE Core Flat Earth 24/7 thing, where I got a server with 3,000 people, and now I'm a big server. Nathan Oakley, watch out, buddy. Alright, if no one's going to get the link in the server, I will put it out here. And that's how it works. There you go. Anybody who thinks they can explain away some of these things I'm going to go through, please do. You're more than welcome. Alright, so one of the big things was, actually I'm going to go over and check and see if Free Minded is in the Discord server and invite him over, because one of the big things is that we were talking about is the sun, the observations that we make with the sun. That's where my problem starts. No matter what truth is. Yours, mine, his, theirs. It doesn't matter. Um, hang on 1 second. Whoever did that, because I can't see you. Hang on. All right. What's up, Montreal? How you doing, sir? What's up, sir?
Hey, Sean, what's up, bro?
Just hanging out. How you been?
Very good, very good. Just got on?
Yep, just now. And I wanted to.
All right.
How you guys doing? These two, they were in the. I made the announcement in my Discord server. I don't even know if I want to put invites out. Like these, pretty much the server is 90% high school and college kids who know nothing about the Earth.
It is awesome.
It's a good place to get your jollies. It's not you're not gonna go there and have an argument. I think John Watson was there when I gave Crash and him an invite over there, and I left them both messages. Hey man, you're not gonna get a good discussion out of them, and it's just that's the type of server it's become. It's a lot of these newbies. It's weird,
but it's quite entertaining over there.
Yes and no. It gives me a headache. Well, it gives me a headache because I was the only, seriously. You guys don't get you may get you guys who have their servers. I am the only moderator in that channel. So every single person that's got roles in the past 2 weeks, I did it. And then I realized when I gave you and John those mod roles, I forgot. Oh, there's my boy. I forgot you would get pinged when people hit you up. So I took those away, but you guys still have good perks. What's up, Frontline?
Yo, what's going on?
With it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can hear. You were listening, right? You heard me? Because
I'd
have been super fucking awkward if you were like, I just popped in, man. Because I just was like, I'm gonna go over to Discord, see if he's over there.
No, I didn't hear that.
Oh shit! Yeah,
I just got on the link.
I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I seen you went live. I just came over here to check you out, man.
Yeah, because I start. Well, you can tell the title is you were there I think a few times when I started having these conversations over at 24/7, and it was frustrating because we were having a conversation that same night, go there, and it's not going to happen. So I have to start talking about these things like this, and I'm happier because we had a few conversations that we didn't finish and that we had started or we were involved in, and I don't feel like I can express myself there without getting booted. So I have to do it here, and I'd rather talk about these things if you're here. So for instance, one of the things I want to talk about was the sun. We can jump around topics. I don't really mind, but I want to make sure that I kind of settle in on certain topics as that were talked about, at least in some of the explanations that I was hearing. But for one, to me, it's this clear thing now. I understand that the sun does not set, nor does it rise, nor does it travel through our sky. It's because we are rotating that sun does look like that. Now, because of the fact that it appears to do so, the geocentric idea I kind of get, not to a point where I would have any validity saying it works. But the reason it literally appears is because if you look in my background, see how the world kind of just disappears behind something? That's how we see everything.
Yeah, I see it.
That's how our eyes work. That's how everything works when we're looking at Earth. On Earth, this far, on the moon, this isn't real, so don't pin me to it. But the idea is the fact that it does these certain observations. They can either work or not work, and I get that it's pretty big. It's a pretty big deal if the sun idea does not work. It's a huge deal for flat Earth, because then they either got to admit one or two things: it's just impossible, or that moon and the sun have to be a lot further away and a lot bigger.
I mean, I don't think it's impossible.
Not impossible.
I don't. I mean, me personally, I don't think the sun or the moon has anything to do with us not observing curvature.
Well, it has a lot.
That's just how I look at it.
Well, it wouldn't if it wasn't for the fact that it is a definitive answer of are we moving or are they moving? And the
exactly.
Fact is, yeah, but the problem is if we go into they're moving, then things get a little wonky in the sense of the time we see them and the time of year we see them. Because we see different objects in the sky throughout the year. And the globe explanation of it, it's literally the 23 angle tilt. It's where we are in position to the sun for our summer, summer, spring, and all that stuff. So it's too many things have to be a variable. I didn't even expect to use that word to work for a flat Earth, but don't. For instance, everything I just named explains why seasons happen, why we see certain things in the sky, but when flat Earth has to do the same thing, and I get it, no one's fixing to this idea that it runs in the middle of flat Earth, but for that to be the case, the sun and the moon, or the sun, when it does this travel between the Cancer and tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, it would literally need to be speeding up and or slowing down. The problem with that is that it doesn't happen. We do not see that at all. There's no. I don't even think Flat Earth has ever attempted to show that the speed of the sun changes throughout the year.
I mean, there's some interesting clues about different things that happen.
Did you take an aspirin, babe?
In the southern, I guess the southern, y'all call it the southern hemisphere. Like in Australia, I've talked to some people from Australia.
Sorry.
The twilight, the twilight. Basically, the time, like the twilight, lasts longer down south than it does up north. That's kind of interesting. But I would like to say like the antecedent for everything you said would be that the Earth has to be round, and that we would have to be able to detect curvature, and it pretty much boils down to that.
Okay, but then
you can't have anything of what you just said. It requires that Earth has curvature.
No,
and that's something that you guys just can't prove.
It doesn't require. It is because of. And we knew curvature before we knew what things were and how they worked. I mean, it's.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. There's no proof of observed curvature.
I can show. Wait, there's lots of it. Obstruction. Do you want to share that?
Obstruction doesn't mean curvature. That's what I'm saying.
It does. Curvature. You're right. It does not mean that. But curvature, obstruction, is obstruction due to curvature.
No, what about the times when it doesn't even match your globe model?
Okay, but what?
You can have obstruction closer than 8 inches per mile squared. Like sometimes it'll go closer than that.
But
so is the Earth smaller
per mile? Is it has more relation to your tangent line, which is where the horizon is and what you can and cannot see. And we don't live on a perfect circle, so that doesn't work. It doesn't work even over oceans. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's zero curvature. I don't. It doesn't matter what kind of formula you use. I went out. I made my own observations. It's nothing.
Okay, what is obstruction?
Obstruction can be optics. It can be optic. Say what?
I didn't know if you were saying in general. I meant more towards the boat observations, just so we know we're on the same page of obstruction.
Yeah, it's the way I know it is most of the time. Every time I've looked into these observations, it's due to just your optics. I understand how my eyes work.
But okay,
and I understand what the horizon is. I understand what an inferior mirage is. I've been kind of looking into it. I'm not an expert on it, but
could you give an example?
I got a pretty good idea.
Could you give an example of your optics being obstruction being due to your optics?
Yeah, inferior mirage will hide the horizon.
hide the horizon.
And you can look at that's not even a flat Earth.
But
that's not anything a flat Earth that's made up. That's something you can go ahead and Google that.
Yeah, but do you mean it mirrors at the horizon?
It'll mirror and block.
No,
and you'll see. I mean, it's telltale. It's tell signs that show you what an inferior mirage is. The heat shimmer.
Yeah, but
the mirroring effect.
I'm pulling it up right now.
And that's the main thing. And when these guys, when we say the horizon proves flat Earth, that's absolutely true.
There we go. So I'll share it right now. All right, so this is on physics or is it hyperphysics? Pretty cool website. A little bigger for you. All right, so it shows basically what, and it gives an explanation for it. So you're talking about, so you understand that a mirage is what you see of refraction be due to refraction upon or for whatever reason.
Yeah, I've actually read that website. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
that's a good one.
So what are we looking for? You're looking for the looming?
No, you can see the inferior mirage is
see
basically the opposite of looming.
Well, so on here it says inferior mirage. Then the inferior mirage.
Yeah, read that whole thing right there. That explains that. Okay. That will tell you. Okay, yeah, so what I just said. That's a good website.
So this part right here. Depending on
Yeah, that whole section on inferior mirages.
Well, it's this whole thing is
right there. Yeah. And the bottom of that too is a good passage.
This one?
Yeah, that one and the bottom one.
Okay.
If you scroll down, that whole thing is pretty good. It sums it up pretty good.
Okay, it says the inferior mirage is produced when light rays from an object approach a hotter region and are refracted away from the hot area. In the desert mirage, the rays approaching the hot surface are turned upward away from the surface. If thus upward rays are intercepted by your eye, you will see the mirage or the mirage image appearing below the actual object, following the pattern of Greenler, the demonstrate this kind of mirage. The amounts of curvature shown in the illustration are the greatest extracted area. Such inferior mirages are typically seen from a large distance, and the curves are much less than that in the illustrated. So it's showing what happens in cold air, hot air. That's pretty basic. I mean, we all understand that the hot.
Yeah, I like if you could look at the one below that too, is when they talk about the vanishing line.
Okay, so it says depending on the temperature profile or the temperature profile, there may be a level below which all rays will be bent upward above their observer's location. This is called the vanishing line. Okay, so the vanishing line, inferior mirage, that's that mirror line that I was talking about at the horizon. It doesn't obstruct it; it mirrors it.
Keep reading.
That's how you would know the difference. View of object mirage from the observer's perspective. Okay, considering the desert example, the rays. Okay, so it's probably showing the one down at the bottom of the illustration down there. Considering the desert examples, the rays from above will refracted upwards towards the cooler air region. There can be a level on the object such that all rays from points below that level will be refracted over the observer's position. Points to below that vanishing point line on the object will not be seen by observers. The observer can see both the objects above the vanishing line and corresponding points to the inferior mirage below that level. A good example of vanishing line phenomena can be found at blah blah blah. So this doesn't.
Maybe you need to. What about the passage below that? Because I've read that before. Maybe scroll down one more.
The superior mirage. Because the superior mirage is your
worst nightmare. Right there.
This is your worst nightmare.
Right, that last one.
You understand that, right?
Would you say no? I'm talking about no. Keep going up. You skipped a paragraph.
No, but that's what we were talking about before.
The one right above Superior Mirage.
Okay, but we're gonna get back to Superior Mirage because that's their flat Earth killer. Or no.
No, I mean this is a bipartisan kind of thing, man. It's not flat Earth, globe Earth.
This is more towards your Rogers Center explanation. But we'll get there.
Yeah.
The above illustration is a pattern after one of the Greenlier, based on the observations of lake in northern latitudes. The vanishing line limits the amount of distant shoreline that is visible in the inferior. Big Blue.
There you go.
What's up, Big Blue? What? The vanishing line limits the amount of distant shoreline that is visible, and the inferior mirage is exhibiting below the vanishing line. The above illustration shows the inferior mirage at the same vertical scale as the object, but that is not necessarily the case. Greenlier notes that the inferior mirage is often vertically compressed with a greater viewing distance. The vanishing line will raise so that less than an object is seen. Greenlier notes that the small change in viewing height, like stomping down or dramatic change in the vanishing line, may occur. Okay, so that's basically showing you what we say. You're seeing less, but that's not an obstruction. You don't see that much. That's just, or I'm sorry, it's actually, actually between those two. See the vanishing line?
Yeah, you can, if you compare the two pictures, right? The one on the top, you can, the dotted line is, that's your, that would be your vanishing, that would be your horizon.
Yeah, but remember, this is the case of where it does bend up. And when it does bend up, we see less.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Most of the time, when we make these observations, the light is actually bending up.
Well, here, in the same case as the Rogers Center, where refraction bends down, and that's how we're able to see.
No, it's bending up. You see right there in that picture is almost exactly what you see in that Rogers Center.
Literally saying refraction bends light downwards towards the colder region. That's what it's saying.
Hold on, you're looking at Superior Mirage now.
Yes, I am 100%.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Inferior Mirage.
How would you tell the difference?
Easily.
How?
You gotta look at the signs of an inferior mirage, right?
Mm-hmm.
The mirroring effect.
Yep.
You get the heat shimmer.
Okay. Is that the only?
You get the compression.
What about a superior mirage now? What happens there?
Yeah, I mean that happens too, right?
Well, no. It's instead of upwards, it's downwards.
So we have to figure out. Yeah. So in these observations, we have to figure out which one it is.
Well, in the Rogers Center, seeing how we're missing complete airport and light tower, and we're trying to tell you it's refraction bending downward. That's exactly his view. Shows you exactly why you see differently. That's why you see so much. You're not seeing it. You're seeing the refracted light.
Well, I guess the debate is, or the problem is, you say it's a superior mirage, I say it's an inferior mirage. So
it's not for.
We have to look at the observation and determine which one it is.
Yeah, it's not for us to make that determination, because what you're saying
is for me.
Listen. No,
it's for me to determine what I see.
So where's Rogers Center over? What are we observing over? What are we looking over?
You're looking over one of the Great Lakes. I forgot the name of it.
Yep. Okay, this is why I brought this up. What you're talking about happens when the hot air is below and the cold air is above. What's happening in the Toronto observation is cold air below and the hotter air above. That's how we know it's.
You have your right to your opinion, man. But that's
whoa.
That's usually not what happens.
Stop.
You know that, right?
No, that's not an opinion.
You can actually see the heat coming up from the water.
Again, wait. You're telling me that water was hotter than the air?
So yeah, of course that happens. It goes both ways. That's why it's really
Center observation.
Yeah, I mean, both of us, neither one of us measured the temperature of the water. So all we have to go on is what we see.
So wait,
and what we see corresponds with an inferior mirage.
Let me ask you a question.
Right? Yeah.
So this website that you said was credible, it's correct when it's explaining inferior mirage, but the second it starts talking about the superior mirage, it doesn't know what it's talking about anymore.
I mean, we can rewind the tape. I didn't say that.
Well, no, you didn't. I'm just asking because that's what you're saying, or that's basically what you're saying.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Okay, then
come on now.
Again, if we're looking at the Toronto observation, which one is more likely to be occurring? The superior mirage or the inferior mirage?
The inferior mirage. I told you that.
Let me explain this again. The inferior mirage is when the hot surface reacts with the colder air. The Rogers Center is not that way. It is actually the colder water reacting with the warmer air, which is why it bends down, which is why we see so much.
Can I ask you to prove what you just claimed?
What part? I'm reading it
that
right
you
now.
know the temperature of the water, and because when you look at it, you can tell that there's a lot of heat on that day. There's a lot of heat, man. You can see the heat rising, and it's showing all the signs of an inferior mirage, right?
You serious?
A superior mirage, the top of the building would be all fuzzy and messed up, and that's not what you see. The tops look real clear. It's just at the bottom, and you can actually, if you look at the video, you can actually see the line, just like in the picture on that website with the island. It's almost exactly like that.
No. Okay. First of all,
that's your interpretation, bro.
Reminded, what is the shape of the top of the Rogers Center?
What do you mean? What's the shape?
What shape is the top portion of the Rogers Center?
Are you talking about the tower?
No, the Rogers Center. What shape is the Rogers Center?
I don't know. I'm talking about the tower. I have to go back and look at it, but I don't know what that has to do with anything.
The Rogers Center will tell you whether or not this is an inferior or superior mirage.
Yeah, we can look at the footage.
Yep.
If y'all want to bring it up.
If you brought up the image. So,
one thing before we start, because Brian, I know this is all you, and for my Brian, this is gonna be fun. But I gotta get this right. I'm so confused, bro. Okay, so the website that you said is credible, that explains that an inferior mirage, hot on bottom, cold on top, and the superior mirage, which clearly states that it happens over cold water. You're telling me that that's not possible.
Oh, no, that's not what I said. I'm saying, how do you know the temperature of the water?
Because
it didn't look like a very cold day. It looked like a pretty hot day.
It was in the northern Great Lakes, and if you're gonna say it was a warm day, you're still not helping yourself, because if it's a warm day, that doesn't mean the water is warm.
That just means there's cooler, denser air at the bottom near the lake.
I mean, it doesn't mean nothing. When you guys, you can make up anything you want, but when we look at the footage. Now, are you claiming that that's a superior mirage? Is that the case? That's what you guys are claiming.
Yes,
it is a superior mirage, and I can show you.
All right, let's look at the footage and let's find out together.
Okay. Did you want me to replay when we did it here? Because, dude, it's off. I'll get it. Who is breathing?
Let's also just forget that. Hang on, let me actually turn my AC off. Let's also not forget that if it were upward, what?
Okay, let's talk shit. Talk about your AC.
Yeah. But let's not forget that if it were upward refraction happening there, that means for some reason there's a section of air in between what the Rogers Center and what we're seeing that for some reason just doesn't reflect anything. And somehow other light is going through it.
Well, if you understand refraction, it depends a lot on your angle, the angle of incidence.
Probably. And yet somehow there's an area that doesn't refract. Somehow you're saying there's an area that doesn't refract at all in this area. As a matter of fact, there's an area that is just completely missing from view between you and the Rogers Center.
Yeah, if you go over that passage that Sean just had up, it kind of describes it, and it tells you Why you wouldn't be able to see the shoreline of an island
Hang on.
if an inferior mirage was in there? Go ahead.
You're misquoting that badly. Here's the problem.
Well, let's bring it back up.
Okay.
No,
See if I misquoted it.
we're bringing up the other thing first because I'm going to show you that it's a superior mirage.
Yeah, I admire your confidence, bro.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I
Can I
understand
say
that you're not going to listen to it. Sorry, go ahead, Erebus.
Yeah, free-minded. What's an angle of incidence?
That's gonna be what you talking about with refraction, right?
What is
That's gonna determine like when you look at it's gonna determine what kind of refraction you're gonna see. Like when you see a pencil.
I want the
Hold on, now, when you see a pencil in water.
Hang on. He's let him answer.
Yeah.
specific question, and he's obfuscating.
No.
I'm not obfuscating. I'm telling you how I understand what that means, and I'm gonna give you a demonstration. When you see a pencil in water, right?
Can you start with an actual
when you look at
definition?
it, the greatest angle of incidence is going to be 45 degrees, right? When you look at it at 45 degrees, that's going to be the greatest angle of incidence, right? I mean, you can Google it to find the proper definition if you want. I don't memorize the whole definition.
Proper definition.
No, hang on.
Well, look it up.
No, he doesn't have to give it. He gave a very, very layman's version of what refraction is. He was right. The problem is that you would need to understand it to then be making the claims that it's not happening the way we're explaining it to. Like, we understand that why it's bending down versus why the inferior mirage bends up.
Right.
But you're saying
it's going towards the more dense.
But but you're saying that the water had to have been hotter than the air. The only time that happens in jacuzzis.
It does happen in other places, but it's very rare for water.
Especially that.
Yeah, but Sean, it's also about it's not just temperature, man. It's about the humidity in the air, and we all know that dry air is denser than moist air.
All it has to be is warmer air, warmer than.
No, bro. No, I mean, come on now. We can look this up. It has to do with the amount of moisture in the air will also affect the refractive index, which is based on air.
Yeah, but see,
hey, Sean, can you go ahead and grab the Genofredo Genofredo observation?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it right now. So I'm looking at my history. Is that crap?
So it also makes sense that the air closer to the water is going to be, wouldn't you say, more moist?
Doesn't mean
it's also going to be denser because it's cooler.
What was that, Sean?
What? I thought I heard your frog.
It's going to be more moist, and the dry air that's going to get drier as you go up, so that the light is going to refract up.
Which has a greater effect, the density of air or the humidity of air? And
they all work together. I mean, if it's cold air, it's not going to be able to hold as much water. That's why winter air is drier, right?
If they are roughly the same humidity, is the temperature going to make the difference?
I mean, the colder, it's going to mean less water in it.
Yes, but if the density,
right?
if the humidity is relatively the same, but the air temperature difference is greater, which is going to have a greater effect, the density or the temperature?
I mean, you do have some instances where the colder is going to be the way that you just described. But what I'm talking about is what's happening in the Genofredo video.
You have lots of instances over water where the air is cooler near the surface of the water.
Okay, well let's talk about we're talking about this specific observation, right? And all the ones I've made, I live by the water.
Well, I'm going to show you on the Genofredo video if it ever comes up. How you can tell this is a superior mirage.
Okay.
I'd still like to know how multiple sunsets work on a flat Earth.
Don't.
There you go. There we go.
We're not changing the subject right now. We're not going to do that. Hang on, I'm trying to find make sure.
I knew that was coming.
Stop. We're not even. Don't even answer.
Nah, I ain't tripping.
And we can avoid this whole thing.
Have a good little conversation, man. I'm not trying to be combative with nobody.
We can actually avoid this whole thing if you can just tell me what the shape of the top of the Rogers Center is.
I mean, what does that have to do with anything?
This will tell you whether it's an inferior or superior mirage.
No, I mean, if is it fuzzy at the top?
It actually looks square in the Genofredo video, but
I'm
you know
talking
what
about.
that,
I'm specifically talking about that tower next to it.
What the? Oh,
yeah, the tower is also high enough up to where you're not going to get a lot of the issue that you're having near the bottom where the actual problem is.
Exactly. That's a big point you just made.
I'm not sure why you think that just was a point in your favor.
Well, we're not supposed to. It's supposed to be 500 feet, 500 plus
Nope,
feet
tangent
missing
line.
from that
Tangent
tower.
line.
You know that, right?
Well, hang on. First of all, that's the tangent. You're doing a tangent calculator again, and also refraction, bending down, explains that as what we're able to see.
No, he just the top of the tower is not. He just told you the tops
Again.
are not affected by it.
Again.
No, the top of the
It's
tower
too
is high
tall,
enough.
right?
The top of the tower isn't what's in contention for the Mirage. Now, the Rogers Center, which is that white building on the left, what shape is it normally?
I don't know. Is it dome shape? What is it? I will tell you, the whole thing is in the zone of an inferior mirage. That's why the whole thing looks fuzzy.
No,
It looks very fuzzy.
Here's the
and
thing.
if you look at it very closely, you can see the line. It's like right on
Free-minded.
top of it. That line goes
Free-minded.
across the whole picture, the
Free-minded.
whole video.
The Rogers Center is a dome. Here it is shaped as a square. That means that the portion that is square at the bottom is being reflected up. Therefore,
No, sir.
therefore it's a superior mirage.
Hang on.
No,
First
sir.
hang on.
Now the whole
Here's the
top
problem.
area. Now we're
If
seeing
that
the
were
top of that tower,
if that
right?
were an inferior mirage, then we would be
Hang on.
looking at a
You're
circle.
missing something. You're missing something big time, free-minded. Where is your mirror line? Show me it mirroring.
I will show you, man. If I have my, it's in the middle. It's in the middle. It's hard to see, but it's in there, right where they start mirroring, and you can tell by the tower because that tower. It's almost like a triangle, bro.
It's not.
And if you look at the base of it, it starts to square off
Again
because it's reflecting the top and bottom of that vanishing line, so it looks kind of square. But in reality, that whole tower is like it slants all the way down. It doesn't square up at the end, at the bottom. So that's a sign that it's actually mirroring what's above it.
You're not
That's
even
what makes it look square.
Reminded you are so fucking stupid. It's not funny. You've explained a superior mirage.
You tough on the internet, bro. You tough on the internet.
God damn it! Hey, stop.
No, I ain't gonna fall for that, man.
No,
You're internet warrior.
Stop for a second, Brian. Don't go there.
I will meet you somewhere.
I'm serious. Don't go there, Brian. Guys,
okay.
Just have a conversation. That's all it needs to be.
Free-minded. That building, the Rogers Center, is showing as a square. That building is shaped like a dome. For it to be a square, that means the bottom half of it is being reflected up as a superior mirage.
Sean, hey, whoever talking, can you tell me what a superior mirage is and how will we know it's a superior mirage?
I just gave you an explanation as to why that's a superior mirage.
No, I don't want no. I want you to know. I want to know. You know what a superior mirage is because the image will be fuzzy, right?
The image is fuzzy.
No, the top. What about the top of the tower, bro?
The top.
That whole thing. Hold on. That whole thing will have to be miraging up, right?
No, there only has to be mirage.
So why can't we see it then? Why can't we see it?
Because the light is being bent down to our eyes.
Can I say something?
No, but I'm talking about the very top that's not even affected by the mirage. You got to remember, 500 feet, 500 plus feet is supposed to be missing, man, from that whole picture, and it's not.
What you're not understanding is what we're seeing isn't what you think you're seeing either. Same with like the JB Tolan, a lot of the idea that perspective has anything to. Your perspective is the fact that you see this. First of all, second. What Brian's trying to explain to you is that if it was what you're saying, an inferior mirage, then it would mirror what's miraging.
It is.
No, it's not, because if it was, then what we're looking at, that white building would be a dome on the bottom.
No, sir. You understand that whole thing. You can't even. It's so fuzzy from the heat shimmer.
Okay, let me show you again.
You can barely pick out shapes on that thing, man.
Let me show you very quickly, because this is as obvious as it gets. Look, we were just looking at the inferior difference between the inferior mirage and a superior and a super.
Yeah.
So check this out. This is why this is a problem. So when you get into what's going on, wrong one. There it is. Okay. So again, in an inferior mirage, At the vanishing line, there's a mirroring effect. That's why it's showing you a mirroring effect. Where's the mirroring effect here?
I mean, I got it on my page. I'm looking at it right now.
Show me, because I'm not seeing a mirroring effect.
Yeah, you don't have to see it if you choose not to, I guess. But
Where's
I
the
mean,
Rogers
just like me telling you,
okay.
who am I going to believe? You or my own eyes?
Where is the tower mirroring? You should be able to see that easily.
Yeah, I explained to you. You see at the base of that tower, right, where it gets fuzzy. The base of that tower.
Okay. Well,
it looks almost square, right?
Okay. Why?
Yes, and that square means that it's going up. That means that the base has been drawn up.
Yeah, that's refracting up. That's what I said.
That would be an inferior mirage doesn't pull things up.
If it was an inferior mirage, the top of
it's not pulling anything up.
Look, if it was the Rogers Center, if we're looking at the Rogers Center and inferior mirage, we would see the dome. We would see the dome. It wouldn't be compressing it because of the way it's bending the light. Because it's bending the light from the base, it's literally, you're seeing not the whole building. You're seeing what the light has given to your eyes. That's why everything is so scrambled. If it was any other situation, like where it's not the mirage itself, we would see straight lines. Like, buildings aren't built like that. And the fact that this whole image is like that shows us that it's light being given to us, not the object that we're viewing. That's why when you focus in more, you can't see as much as you're seeing right now. Don't you he's trying to explain to you all the reasons why it's not inferior mirage, and you're battling it. Your best claim was that the water was warmer than the air.
I never said I never said anything about that because I really don't know the temperature of the water.
Okay,
right?
Well, if you're gonna,
I said it looks like a hot day, right?
How about this?
But if it's doing what you guys, so that whole city is being lifted up. Is that what you're saying?
When you keep saying a warm day, you understand that warm day it crushes it every time, crushes you every time, because that's exactly what we're saying is happening. The air is warmer than the water, and when it's not, when would that be? When do you see this? I mean, there may be a few places, but there's no ice. I'm not seeing ice anywhere. I'm not seeing it snow, so it's not.
I would say most of the time you see this. That's why, as the day progresses, or when the refraction is least, that's when you can see the most. Like, the refraction is really blocking the images. That's why it's blocking.
See, the
vanishing line. It's blocking the horizon. Actually, it's not revealing anything. It's actually blocking what you can see.
And superior mirage.
And I have a video to prove that too.
This was your video that proved it.
Yeah, I have another one though. There's plenty. That's what I'm saying. We have plenty of videos to prove what we're saying, man.
Not only are we trying to explain to you that your whole mirage idea is wrong, but where the heck are the other islands that you don't see them?
That's what I'm saying. They're being blocked by that superior mirage.
Curvature.
Oh, it is a superior mirage.
That's why, like in that website, it showed you why you wouldn't be able to see the shoreline, because it would be getting blocked by the inferior mirage.
Free-minded. You just call it a superior mirage. Are you going to stick with that?
I said inferior mirage. Let's not get silly. Let's not get silly. I mean, I know you probably a silly dude. You sound like one, but let's keep it cool.
Yeah, I'm a real silly dude. I'm just
sound like it, bro. Sound like it.
All right, stop. Okay, here's the thing. This video isn't your proof anymore. Remember, we pretty much showed that.
No, you said that. Of course, you would say that, man.
So
y'all have to say this.
Okay, no,
I have to.
I don't have to say anything. I'm about to keep it as real and say what I want. Ready? We're gonna go to Toronto. What's the name of that lake? Lake Ontario.
Yep.
I will say it has to do with that. It has to do with of course y'all hate to hear it, but perspective and how far you're actually going to be able to see the face of the ground.
You still haven't figured out that building being square means that it's a superior mirage, and you're going to try to school us on perspective.
That is not a superior. And I would ask you.
If that's an inferior,
nobody's going to say that. Anybody that knows anything about weather, they're not going to say that that's a superior mirage, right? If they do, they don't know what they're talking about.
Stop.
Free-minded.
Hang on. What's the difference between the two? What happens? What is happening? Can you explain that again?
What, with a superior mirage?
Both. start with an inferior mirage. What is making that mirage happen?
The inferior, the light is refracting up
Why?
and towards your eyes because the light is going towards the denser medium, right? The denser air, which is on top.
Which is no. Well, it. Okay.
Yeah.
Simplify your answer. Where's the hot air and where's the cold air in each situation?
But in this video, the hot moist air is at the bottom, right? It's hot. It's moist. It's more moist air. The drier air is at the top. Drier air is less. Is going to be denser.
So you're saying what's up? Where's the hot? Top or bottom? An inferior mirage.
In the top.
No. Inferior mirage.
The denser air is gonna. The drier air is at the top. The drier air is at the top. The moist air is on the bottom.
That the site that I was using was credible, so we can't say it's not. Let me show you again. An inferior mirage, the hot air is on the ground. The cool air is above. In a superior mirage, the cold air is lower, or the cold water is lower, and the warmer air is why it bends down. So
okay,
you're confused in why.
No. But you also got to throw in the humidity, man. That has a lot to do with refraction.
Yes. What is the change in humidity over the course of 50 feet?
Or better yet, what is the change in the explanations between the two?
Hold on now. Well, we gotta get back to what do you think? Would you agree that the air closer to the water probably going to be more moist, right?
Yeah, you know what? It doesn't even matter.
It's going to have more water in it, right?
Yes, but that doesn't mean that it's significantly
so the drier air.
Would you listen for a half second? That doesn't mean that it's significantly more moist. It can be significantly colder, though.
It's a gradient, right? It's probably it gets gradually drier.
Yes, how much drier does it have to get?
The drier air, everybody knows, drier air is more dense.
Yes, what's going to be the change in humidity between those two layers?
What you mean? I mean, I can't look at the picture and tell exactly the dew points and all that. I don't know.
Doesn't make
I can just go by what I see.
You understand that, right?
He doesn't care about the humidity. He's quoting Seekenfind, and Seekenfind's idea that refraction is backwards because
I never heard Seekenfind say anything about this.
Sorry, Thrive and Survive. I'm sorry.
Okay, so
I found that after I knew that. He just kind of confirmed what I already knew.
Wait,
Thrive and Survive he was a weatherman, so he knows what he's talking about.
He was not a weatherman.
Stop, guys.
He was not.
He was not a weatherman.
Guys, stop.
What was his job in the Navy?
Guys,
stop. His job was to deliver. His job was to deliver papers to the weatherman.
I know I'm not muted, and I know you can hear me. So stop. Free-minded. Do you know when that Jane Alfredo video was uploaded?
It was uploaded a long time ago.
It doesn't matter.
I'll say about 2 or 3 years ago.
I need a date.
I don't know. Do you?
I'm looking right now. That's what I'm trying to find out.
Okay.
Because that would say exactly when you're saying this happened. I don't see a...
April 9, 2017 is the upload date from her page.
Okay, so in April, the Great Lakes, the temperature of the water is around, or the average would say would be about 35 degrees in April.
And it depends on what time of day it was too, also.
Oh, water doesn't heat up that much during a day compared to air.
It doesn't cool down as quickly either, right?
You're right. It stays pretty low. So if we're gonna say it's gonna be about 38, and then we'll do temperature.
Okay, thank you, baby girl. All right, thank you. Say it again. I'm sorry, my daughter came in. Say it again.
I'm trying to find the temperature for Toronto in that range of the year. See what temperatures are like. We're looking for about April.
The typical low is still above the average temperature of the water.
Yeah, but at any
April.
time of the day, it can be the opposite any time of the day. Like if it's in the evening,
Okay, so which
the
one? would it
water's
be?
going to be warmer than the air.
Well, it's not the
No,
evening.
not
It was the middle of the day.
Or if
We
as the
know when
day
it was.
progresses.
We know when it was. So if it's 35, 38, and the average through April, so you pick a day you want, but every
I've actually got the
temperature
weather. I've actually got the weather averages here. 54 is the high average.
Yeah, I'm looking, except for 2 days, unless it was on the 31st or the 1st, every day was warmer than the water's average. The average temp, or it says the actual temp, I'm sorry. So yeah, the air was warmer still.
I mean, what time of day? The air, you said the highest, what was the low?
It wasn't at night though.
Because it does work both ways, man.
It wasn't at night.
Well, if it's afternoon,
No.
then what's going to happen?
When do you think the low happens?
The air's going to start to cool off. The water's going to retain the heat.
When does the low happen?
The average water never got to the temperature. The average water temperature never even got to the low temperature.
Yeah.
On that day, I mean, did y'all take these measurements on that day? How do we know this? That's what I'm saying.
No, we went to the average because you didn't know the date, so we used
Okay,
upload date.
We don't have
go back to that day if you're gonna
We
do
don't
it like
have an
that.
exact. We don't have an exact date, so we're going to
Yeah.
use the average.
Yeah, we're just
Okay.
looking. Okay, I'll go to 2018 if you need me to. I don't mind doing that at all, but that's exactly, if we don't have the exact data, but we have around. This is what you do. It's better than not doing any of it.
Yeah, that's cool. I like what you guys are doing, man.
But the problem is that your understanding of refraction and superior mirage is not correct. You literally described it backwards.
I don't think so. I mean, that's good. That's your opinion, man.
No.
What I see,
I showed you that.
no, you actually didn't, bro.
Okay,
you actually
I'll do it
didn't.
right now. I'll do it again.
You're assuming
Nope, I didn't
you
assume
know the
anything.
exact conditions of that day.
No, this is the
But
thing.
you don't even have, you can look at the
Remind
footage
you,
and tell
here's the
what's going
problem.
on.
When I
Yeah, and the thing is, if it is what you
look,
sorry, go
see
ahead.
this?
Go ahead.
You see this right here? This is what you said. You said, I asked you very clearly, in an inferior mirage, where's the hot air? Where's the cold air? You literally flipped this. You flipped it. You don't know if the cold air is supposed to be on the hot or the body, so you don't understand.
No, bro. I literally, you're flipping what I said now.
Wait. So what's it? Okay. What's a superior mirage?
You're actually,
What's a
it actually
superior mirage?
is going against what you're saying, man.
What? No.
The
what's a
warmer
superior
air
mirage?
is going to be at the bottom, right?
For
The
what?
cooler air is going to be at the.
For what? For which mirage? Which
Hold on.
one?
See, now you're getting me fucked up, man.
No, I'm not. Literally.
You didn't need
You
any
kind of
help with
flipped.
that.
You kind
I'm
of flipped
telling
it.
you right now. You've done that twice now. You literally. I asked you that question.
Nah, bro. Hey,
Look
bro.
at
Don't.
that.
You like a bad lawyer, man. Stop it.
Okay. Go look it up, and you tell me. Look, I'll show it
Well,
to you.
let's put it back up. Put it back up, man.
There you go.
Okay, go to the other one.
Okay. Right.
Cooler air. But you also have to throw in the moisture in the air.
The moisture gradient is not going to be as significant as the temperature difference.
It doesn't.
So
explain-
whoever just talking, I mean, do we know the temperature difference?
Yeah.
All we
yeah.
really have to
Look,
go on is what we
here you go.
see in the footage.
We have an average temperature difference. We have an average temperature difference we can get off of this.
And this is an average from the year prior. So yeah, the averages are pretty spot on. April. Yep. April.
So what you? Let me get this clear. But you guys are claiming this is a superior mirage, right?
Yes, and that's evident in the fact that the Rogers Center is showing as a square instead of a dome.
Can you go to that picture of a superior mirage again, Sean? That you had the little graph you had. Okay, is that what's happening with that city?
Yep.
Just because the entire thing is not refracted up doesn't mean that a portion of it can't be.
Hold on, the top of it is looking like that, or is the bottom of it really looking all fuzzy?
A portion
The
of
most
it
fuzziness
was,
is at the
portion of it
bottom,
was
man. So
miraged
it's the
up.
opposite of what that picture is showing.
No, a portion of it was miraged up.
The real object, the real thing, you're actually seeing the real thing at the top, man.
The Rogers
top
Center is
of that
not square.
That top of that tower is not refracted, man.
Yes.
There's no kind of
We
miraging
understand.
going on at the top of that tower.
It is.
Yes, we agree with that. We're not
Okay,
saying
how
that the
much
top
of that
the
tower is supposed to be missing?
You're not getting it.
No, you're not. That's the whole thing is The
No,
curvature,
you're acting as if
the blockage, the curvature is missing, bro.
You're
500 feet.
as if
We're not supposed to see 500 feet of that whole
you're
skyline,
acting
man.
as if there is no miraging happening.
No, but how does this correlate with the 500 feet, man? That's supposed to be there,
Because
but it's
you
not.
are acting like
right?
it. You're acting like the refraction. There's no miraging happening. If there's no miraging at all,
he's acting like there's no miraging and there's no refraction.
Yeah, you're acting like it doesn't.
What
exist.
I'm saying is that there's no mirage at the top, man. The top of them towers.
Yes, and we don't expect that.
So why can't we see it? That's the whole thing, bro.
Because the CN Tower is 1,800 feet tall.
Yeah, you're missing still tower. Because
So is 500 feet of that tower missing?
Why would the top
No, because it's being refracted up.
Tower be missing?
Even then,
500 plus feet of that whole skyline is supposed to be missing.
if there were no refraction, that'd be accurate geometrically. With refraction plus the superior mirage, you are getting the city refracted upward with a portion of it. With a portion of it coming up in such a way to mirage it and obscure certain things like the top.
Now you already said previously that at the top. Oh yeah, that's above where the refraction would happen. Now you're going back and saying, oh yeah, it's happening up top too.
The entire thing is refracted up. Yes.
Yeah, I just want you to prove that, man. 'Cause that really sounds silly. That refraction would just bring a whole city up like that. That's just crazy. And then when you look into it, it's impossible.
No.
What do you mean it's impossible?
Refraction doesn't even act. It doesn't even act like that. It doesn't even like the refraction index of air is almost the same as a vacuum, man.
First of all,
so it's not going to do something major like that. It's not going to do something extremely major. That kind of major refraction. It's not going to do it. It's impossible. It never happens.
Based on what? Look at the end of this. You see the Rogers
Based on the refraction, the refractive index of air is almost close to a vacuum, man.
You don't even know what the refractive index of air is.
It's almost. It's like a thousandth of a percent off, a thousandth of a point off from a vacuum, man.
A thousandth of a percent.
So there you go, speaking from ignorance, man. You don't know what I know.
What's vacuum is 1.
Obviously, you don't know.
Air is 1.03.
That's more than 1,000th.
Okay, so my point is better then.
No, is it you're a factor of 30 off?
Oh, you said okay, but is it similar to a vacuum? It's pretty much similar to a vacuum.
No, because
we can say it's going to be very
because of the angle of incidence. No, but
right. That's another thing. The angle of incidence, right?
But that's dependent on the refraction. It doesn't. It's not different. It's going to give you that reading because of, and that's what we're seeing with the Ontario. I mean, she puts in the upload the evidence, and Brian just tried to say it. The roof, why is it flat in the upload, but not flat in any other picture?
Well, the whole entire building is real fuzzy and real blurry.
No,
it's obviously square though.
But you know why?
Due to refraction.
Yes, and if it were an inferior mirage, it would be a circle, not a square.
I mean, you can't see it clearly. I don't see how y'all can really determine.
This is your upload. Why would you use it?
What you mean? Because I know what I'm seeing in it.
No, we know what we're seeing in it, and you're saying what we see is wrong because it's fuzzy. That's what you're looking at too,
right?
You know.
So the part that's being refracted should be fuzzy, right? Real fuzzy.
I'm asking how
you can see the whole layer if you skim your mouse across the whole bottom part. You can, if you look close, you can see the line, man.
I'm asking
where it's mirroring itself.
I'm asking though, how is it that you understand what's happening, but we don't? What part?
Maybe I've looked into it probably a little bit more.
Okay, then explain.
And you guys have a bias because it has to be doing what you think it's doing. You have to be able to put that Band-Aid on it.
Why?
For you to believe in your spinning ball fairy tale.
Okay, here's the Band-Aid you're going to put on it. Why is this roof dome, and in your observation earlier in the video, it flat? Why?
I mean, we can look into that, but that has nothing to do with 500 feet of that
You think
that whole
you think
city
that's-
skyline
you think
that
that's-
whole city skyline
wait, you think
there
that's-
when it shouldn't be there, man.
No. Let's talk about the title of your upload. Rogers Center from 6 feet above Lancaster, Ontario, 30 miles away. Why does the Rogers Center look like that?
Oh, because the Earth's curve? Because the Earth's a ball? That's what you're trying to say?
No, I'm asking you. I mean, you're telling us we're wrong.
I mean, are you?
So you should know the
do you
reason
think
why.
you're jumping to conclusions?
No, I'm asking you. Why does it do this?
Well, we can look into it, right? Let's look into it and see why.
We have. You don't want to hear it.
And your conclusion is because Earth's a ball, man.
Because no. Ready? Superior Mirage. That's why.
Inferior Mirage. Inferior Mirage.
No. See.
Because that whole band right there.
You hear what you just
that whole band of air.
Stop.
It almost starts right at the top of that.
Stop. Free.
Right at the top of that building, man. So everything's gonna be kind of malformed,
Stop.
bro.
You literally just, like I said, a superior mirage. You went inferior mirage.
Of course.
No.
I like telling the truth, man.
No, you don't.
No matter what the outcome is, it is what it is.
I just showed you the average temperature of this water, which is colder than the air, which is why a superior mirage is what we see. Where you keep saying it's an inferior mirage, like the water is warmer than the air, which we showed you on average is not.
Hold on, man. Now you need to look more into this, man.
Oh, okay.
Just because the water
is
cooler than the air above it doesn't mean the air is still going to be cold, man.
That means
you know that, right?
No, listen. That means it's not an inferior mirage.
How come? No. How come? Tell me this. Why does it take longer for the water to heat up and for it to cool off?
Doesn't have nothing to do with it.
It kind of does, man. Isn't the sun is getting reflected off the water, right? A lot of that energy is getting reflected up, heating up the air above it too, man.
Okay, so
and then you got the moisture in there.
So
right,
yeah, you're right.
The air is going to be more moist.
It's brighter
towards the water.
That's still making the atmosphere.
The drier air is going to be at the top.
That's
drier air.
The warmer air
is what more dense than moist air.
The water. You're still wrong.
Say that again.
The reflecting thing you just said, all that's going to do is make that air warmer still.
Everything it's going to be able to hold more. Hold on, man, because you're not considering the humidity, bro. You're not considering that, man.
But what does it have to do with it? Does humidity all of a sudden make the air cold?
That affects the.
Does it affect the body of water?
No, it affects the refractive index of air.
Yeah. They have numbers for that.
Yeah.
Are you okay? Show me how humid it was out there. Since you wanted me to show you the water temperature and the air temperature.
No, I'm telling you. I mean,
in fact, there was almost zero humidity because it was under 50 degrees.
Okay, you can go ahead and believe that. What I'm saying is neither one of us. All we have to go on is what she put.
Or I can look at the data that we just pulled up for you.
Yeah, she doesn't have the temperatures in there, right?
No, we found that. Look right here. Look, bam. There you go. I did.
Did you find the temperature of the air above the water, and then the air? How do you know?
Oh, I did.
It is what you say, man.
I did.
Just because you know the temperature of the water.
I did. No, this is the air temperature too. I did both.
Okay. Now, how do you know that the temperature above or even the air above the water and the air as you gradually go up? How do you know that information?
Because this is at Lake Ontario.
You guys are acting like you do.
No, we do because I looked it up and I found data and I looked up for supporting data and I received it. This is from this is the
no. You got the temperature of the water and the overall temperature.
No, this is actually the temperature of the air right here.
The whole air. So there shouldn't be any refraction then, right?
What are you talking about?
No, what supports your superior mirage?
The fact that the air is warmer than the cold water.
Besides the fact that we shouldn't see that, and you guys just can't take that. It's a flat earth.
What you're doing right now, but it's weird. We're showing you.
No, it's just man. It has to be said. It's obvious, bro.
We're showing you that the air is warmer than the cold water, which supports a superior mirage way farther than it does an inferior mirage, because why? The water would have to be warmer than the air, which our data does not support.
No, you're wrong, bro. We're not even talking about the temperature of the water is one thing. We're talking about the temperature and the humidity of the air.
Okay, how much
which
humidity?
we don't know.
Show me humidity. How much humidity?
But we can look at the footage and we can see what's going on, man.
Show me the humidity you can have.
Sean, I just dropped an explanation of what's happening to the base of the Rogers Center as a part of a complex superior mirage in the chat. You want to pull that up?
No, because what's the point? We're trying to do basic right now.
Yeah, I mean he's got to tell me how this is an inferior mirage.
I mean, I can see the mirroring line. I can see.
Yes, I know you can.
You're ignoring everything.
How you got it upside down?
You're literally ignoring everything. I don't even know.
I mean, he hasn't really said nothing. I don't pertaining to this observation.
Made it very clear that your understanding of inferior and superior mirage is warped, and that you're not willing to even look at evidence.
No, I mean.
Okay, I showed you evidence.
Hey, Sean.
I showed you evidence.
You would make a good public defense lawyer.
Let's break this down.
But
let's break it down. Did I show you?
Bro, that's not gonna work here, man.
Did I show you water temperature? Did I show you air temperature? Now you tell me, in 55 degrees, how much humidity is possible? Do that at least.
That's irrelevant. Did you show me the air temperature?
Yes.
Above the water? Compared to
at Lake Ontario,
as you go up? No, you did not, man.
Yes, I did.
You told me.
I showed you.
You know the overall air. You know the overall temperature.
That's called reaching, which you have none of to support.
No, it's not, bro. You are being very vague. You got vague data.
Show me something. Show me something that supports inferior.
You got the average temperatures.
So show me the average temperature.
So really, we can't go. All we can go on is our what we observe in this video, man. We don't really know exactly what's going on with the temperature.
What are you going off
of? But we can kind of see what's going on if you look at the footage.
You're not going to be able to answer it. What supports?
Be able to answer what?
What supports your inferior mirage?
Okay.
What supports your inferior mirage?
All right, hold on. I gotta go. I got the video up on mine too.
Why can't you?
Because you can kind of trace the line, the mirroring line in there, man. If you look closely.
Yes, I know, and it shows exactly what we're showing you here.
You see that building like a couple of buildings to the right.
Can you not see what Sean is presenting?
You got like three. It looks like three little smoke things, man. Those are mirroring each other.
Can you see what Sean is presenting?
Hold on, let me go back to your channel. Okay, yeah.
Yes, that is a complex superior mirage.
Now you tell me that's what's going on in this picture.
That's what's going on at the mirror.
The whole city is upside down.
No, see, you're missing the point. There is an area that is mirrored in there. The rest of it is still refracted up. There is a complex mirage occurring.
Also, so we're making stuff up as we go, man.
Yeah, you are.
I guess you are, but
and refracting up is going to cause a sinking effect.
Let me rephrase that.
Y'all needed to refract down for it to be.
Sorry,
for it to rise up.
You made a mistake.
The light has to bend down.
You made a mistake earlier. I'm allowed to make one now too. Okay, so the city is still being pulled to your vision, being refracted down at you. This is happening as well. You have a mirror line with a Fata Morgana, and you have a refracted city.
Man, you added.
No, it's accurate. Okay. It happens. Are you
That's
saying
not what's happening in this footage, man? Come on, you really reaching.
Why is the Rogers Center square then?
I just told you. The same reason why the base of that tower is square.
Yes, that would be
a reflection of top and bottom. It's a reflection of top and bottom.
That's a Fata Morgana.
That band right there.
There's a
hiding the actual horizon.
Yes, exactly. And you know what that is? That's a Fata Morgana as a part of a superior mirage.
So that's your explanation for 500 plus feet of curvature being missing.
Explanation for understanding which mirage is
happening. I mean, that's y'all can go ahead and believe that. That's up to you, man.
Supporting with evidence of it.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, you can believe that.
I'm sure. Have to be believed. He's showing it very clearly.
Okay, I mean, am I gonna believe you or my own eyes, man? That's a really easy question.
My own eyes. That's why I look things up.
I believe mine
before I start to explain them.
All right,
I believe mine.
You believe your eyes? So there are plenty of things your eyes can't perceive without instrumentation.
Oh, I know how my eyes work.
Okay, so
Really? How do your
perfect
eyes work?
You have perfect eyes?
What is the
I mean,
mechanism?
it's all about the angles, man.
What is the mechanism by which you see and vision is generated in your brain?
But the light rays enter your eye at different angles, right?
Okay. Now tell me, what angle is it? What angle is your fine vision? What angle is your gross vision? What angle is your color vision? Tell me. Enlighten me.
What you mean? What angle?
You did say you know your eyes.
No, okay. You explain it. What angle is your color vision?
Nope, I'm asking you. Go for it.
No, you tell me. I never heard of that. I didn't get that deep into it, but yeah, tell me that then.
So you don't know how your vision works?
Well, everything is going to be color, right?
No.
What do you mean?
I don't know. I can't.
Not everything is
no
color.
clue.
The peripheral of your vision doesn't actually have the ability to perceive color. Your brain makes it up. There's a certain...
How about your vanishing line? What is that?
You're gonna have to tell me because you created that particular definition.
No,
I did it. I mean, it's in the website he just put up, man.
it's a term, but it's
I mean,
not
everybody
a
knows it.
definition
You
for
should have learned it in 5th grade art class.
Oh, I didn't. I didn't do
They didn't
art.
really go in deep into it, but
convergent line.
that's where you would initially first hear it, probably.
It's the convergence line.
No.
Yeah, it has to do with the angle.
It's not where everything vanishes. The vanishing point.
He said the vanishing line. I'm
thing.
not even sure what he means by that. You type in
Well,
vanishing
if you understand that it has to do with the angle, the degrees they come into your eye, right? Anything from the inclination and declination of 0.02, your brain is not going to pick that up, man. That's where we get our horizon from.
No, you
That's
get your
where the
horizon.
vanishing line is.
You get your horizon from a physical blockage.
Whoa, time out. Wait, I was waiting for him to say it. So you believe that the horizon is the vanishing point?
Of course.
Would you like me to tell you how that is completely and absolutely incorrect?
I mean, go ahead, bro. You can try.
Okay, it's really easy.
Okay.
Do you think that the horizon is directly straight out in front of you, level with your vision?
I told you what the horizon is.
You're not answering my question.
The horizon is what I said it was. It is when the light is right in the middle of your eye.
Was that my question?
Yeah, it's when you look straight. It's eye level. It's in the
No.
middle of your eye. When you look out
No.
and you see your horizon,
No.
that's what you're looking at.
Every time you say
That's
that,
what
the
horizon
answer is
is.
still no. No.
Okay, you can say no. My little child says no all the time, man. That don't mean he's
Okay,
right.
it's a really simple concept. One, parallel lines, by definition, do not actually intersect. That vanishing point that you think that's not the horizon. The vanishing point is actually beyond the horizon, above the horizon, because your eyes are literally above the ground. You have to physically look down at the horizon. You may not
Why would you
perceive
think
it
that?
because
Why would you
that's the
think that?
truth. Because that is
hold on. Let me and you talk. Okay, so when you look out at the ocean,
wait.
and the ocean
I thought you
appears
said
to
you know
rise
about.
towards your-
Did you
Hold
take
on,
math?
I mean,
Did you
damn,
take art class? Real quick. Did you take art
Can I
class?
talk? Brother,
Just
brother,
real
let me
quick.
talk.
Just honestly,
Huh?
did you take art class?
Yeah, I took it about 30-some years ago.
Oh,
Not 30. Damn, that put me. No, about 20-something. Yeah.
okay.
But
Good deal.
But what I'm saying is, when you look out, I want to get in your head, man. When you look out, when you go to the beach, you look at
Yep,
the ocean.
Yep.
Doesn't the ocean appears to rise up to your eye level, right?
Not if I'm looking straight out.
Hey,
If I'm looking straight out, the
Hold on,
horizon
hold on.
will be below
Okay, so
my eye
that
level.
effect. So what you're saying is that effect is from you slightly looking down, right?
When you're looking at the horizon, what you perceive to be the horizon, what you think is the vanishing point, is not the vanishing point.
So you're saying that the effect of the water appearing to rise up is just you slightly looking down.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, no.
Oh,
Technically, no. But yes.
Yeah, you better correct that.
your eyes are actually geared to, your brain is geared to look towards stark contrast. So if you're looking towards the horizon, you will tend to look towards the area where the contrast is greatest.
However, if you can look straight ahead without deviation, which means perfectly parallel with the ground you're standing on,
Yeah.
it will never meet the center of your vision, ever.
So
Because
the
you are-
effect
because
of
you are-
hold on, the effect of the water rising up doesn't happen when you look straight forward, right?
N-
That wouldn't happen.
Not the way you're talking about. Not okay. Put it this way: you were trying. Okay, I get where you're going. Okay, all right. When it comes to perspective, the further you look out, the smaller things are. It works at your feet when you're looking down at your feet, and it does the same thing when you're looking out past your eyeballs, everywhere.
Okay, I can agree with that.
Okay, so you're trying to, kind of like paint me into a corner. That doesn't work.
No. But what I'm saying
Now,
is like,
do you agree? Do you agree that parallel lines never intersect?
Now, are we talking about optics? Are we talking about physical parallel lines? What are we talking
Physical
about?
parallel lines. Do they
All
ever
right, but,
actually?
When you're looking, your vision.
That's still not an answer.
The light is coming at angles into your eye. You know that, right?
Yeah, that still doesn't really answer my question. Do parallel lines ever intersect?
So if I draw two parallel lines, no.
Yes. Okay. So now,
Okay.
if you goody. All right. Now, so if let's set up the parallel here. Imagine there's a straight laser beam from your eyeball, infinitely straight, never deviates, doesn't curve down, doesn't do anything, goes infinitely straight. And you have that horizon, which is what you're standing on, just extended out in front of you. Okay, now imagine there's that laser line from your toes all the way across. Are those two lasers ever going to cross?
What you mean? Okay, there's a laser at your toe, and and you're holding a laser. That's what you're saying?
No, your eyeballs are the laser.
You're comparing two lasers, right?
Not literal lasers. Just imagine them as a straight edge. Any other parallel you can get.
Oh, okay. I mean, they're gonna converge, right? Just like a train track. Right?
No. Do they actually touch? Do they actually touch?
Of course not.
Okay, and if you move your body,
like touch? Are they gonna look like they touch?
Wait for it.
That's the question.
Wait for it.
Are they gonna look like they touch?
No, not in the way you think. Not in the way you think.
I want to go back to you thinking the horizon is you just slightly looking down, right?
You are slightly looking down.
Okay, I'm gonna give you one last chance now. Is that what you believe? The effect of the ground rising up is just you looking down.
I didn't know. See, there you go. I see what you're doing.
No, I'm not, bro. I promise.
Yes, when the ground is appearing to rise in my scenario.
Yeah.
However, you are looking slightly downward to create a vanishing point at the horizon. Do you understand what that means?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. You're saying the effect.
The lines are no longer parallel.
Let me make sure I understand what you're saying now, before I get you. You're saying the effect of that water when I'm looking at the ocean, the effect of it appearing to rise up to my eye level.
I'm sorry, but did I say anything about rising?
Because I'm slightly looking down.
Did I say no? That's a straw man.
Okay,
I never said.
That's why I want to make clear what you're trying to claim.
Yes, you keep repeating these things and trying to make a claim from me, and I'm not. So you're not going to be able to do that.
Man. What are you talking about? When I gave you the scenario of you at the beach looking out, and why the water appears to rise towards your eye level.
That is not. See, I love how that switched. Okay, I'm giving you the scenario. I'm giving you the scenario, and you're trying to flip the script. I love it. But here's the deal. I've already acknowledged.
This was my question.
Pay attention.
To you, man.
Pay attention. I have acknowledged that as things go further away from you, to include that imaginary hallway that you're making of the beach, and the water and all that kind of stuff. Yes, the floor will converge. However,
Right.
the horizon is not the actual focal point unless you are looking at the horizon, which requires you to look down ever so slightly. Do you understand what that means?
No. I understand where you're coming
deny
from. this.
You can deny
Where
this.
you're coming.
Okay, tell you what. Do you have to look down at the ground? No. let's start out. If you look down at the floor, you have to look down and look at the floor, right? Okay. 10 feet in front of you, are you still looking down?
Okay.
Answer the question.
Yeah.
Okay. 100 feet, are you still looking down?
Am I? Is that what you got me
I'm
doing?
asking you.
Looking down?
I'm asking you. Yeah. I'm asking you.
Okay. If you got me looking down, I'm looking down then.
No. I'm asking you. I'm asking you.
If you want me to look down, I will.
To look at the ground.
If you want me to look down.
Do you look up to look at the ground?
Obviously not.
Is that a yes or no?
I don't know where you're getting it.
Okay, good. So now we've established parameters. Gravy. Now, if you look 200 feet at the ground, are you still looking down?
If I look at the ground, it's kind of like if I'm looking at the ground. If I want to look at the ground,
continuously looking at the ground. We haven't looked.
But what?
Yes.
What is making this ground appear to ramp up? That was my question, man.
That has everything to do with the angle, and we already know all this.
Yes.
You're not really getting there, are you? Okay, so again, at 200, no, see, there you go. At 200 feet, are you still looking down to look at the ground?
Okay.
Yes or no? It's not okay.
Maybe not.
It's a yes or no.
No, it depends on the atmospheric conditions, right?
No, I'm sorry, but we're not playing the games like that.
Have you ever seen how the weatherman will tell you the visibility of that day? 200
feet? You're going to claim that at 200 feet on a regular day, whatever day that would be, all else being equal, if we want to go it that way, well, there's no atmospheric distortion in such a way where you would actually have to worry about that because you're looking down.
What is your point, man?
Are you looking down 200 feet away?
Maybe not. What is your point?
It's not a maybe not, man. If it worked at 10 feet and it worked at 100 feet and it worked at 1 foot, what do you think is going to happen at 200 feet?
So this goes back to what I claimed you were saying. You're saying
you didn't.
The water. Hold on now. The effect of the water appearing to rise up is because you're looking down. This just
no.
I know that
you're still misunderstanding what I'm saying.
Ain't that what you just described? You're looking down.
No.
Right?
Yes, you are looking down. Things are getting further away, and things are also appearing to go up in your vision.
Right. Why are they appearing to go up?
That's the angle. Now.
Exactly. That's my point.
No, not the angle you're thinking.
Yes. Now, atmospheric conditions come in because they have something called a false horizon.
You're still not getting it.
The atmosphere is actually blocking your true horizon.
Yep, you're still not getting it.
It's making it appear like the horizon is closer, but it's just getting blocked. That's it.
Dude.
Causing you to see a false horizon.
As God damn it. The word escapes me. Angle something or other. Angular size. There you go. As the angular size reduces with distance. Angular resolution is not quite the same, but the angular size, right? How big it is, and the further away it goes, it looks like it gets smaller, but it's on all the edges. So the sky is also coming down as well.
Right.
And the land at either side of you. And this is one of the problems that you seem to have when looking out at a beach. You don't have walls or a ceiling to really give you that dimension.
Exactly.
So here's the thing.
I was going to take you there next.
No, you're not taking me. You have to look down. No, I never made the claim about rising. You did. So keep it out of your goddamn mouth, man.
Goddamn mouth.
I didn't say it.
Hold on.
You said it, so we're gonna go. I know. I can't stand it when somebody does that. Pay attention.
Dancing,
please be quiet. No,
you dancing, man.
I'm not dancing. You're the one who's been dancing this entire time.
You're acting tough on the internet.
Dude, I'm gonna tell you right now. I can and would throw you down. Please don't try that shit with me. I am
Well,
not
let's meet
some
up
little
there,
wheezy
man.
little fucker.
Let's meet
How?
up there, man. Let's meet up. Seriously.
No,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
fine.
not the one. Sean, you better tell him. What you think? I'm a small dude or something? I mean, we can meet up. He the one. Hey, he the one threatening with the physical, bro. On the internet, 1,000 miles away. That's real tough. Real tough.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah,
My
you wouldn't say it in my face,
my
man.
issue, yes, I would. My issue is that I
Okay.
can't stand it when someone is misrepresenting what I have said and
You're
what
getting
I've asked
frustrated.
you about.
You're getting frustrated because I cornered you, bro.
No,
I was about
No,
to. You
you-
seen it coming. You smart enough to see it
No,
coming,
hang on.
though.
The problem is, Free,
I'm glad.
that
I'm
you do
impressed
it to me
about
as
that.
well, where you do this thing where you completely just reverse something and just don't even.
No.
gloss over
Hey,
like it
Sean.
happened.
Sean, bro, this is what I told him. I gave him a scenario to explain to me the effect of the water appearing to
No.
rise up towards your eye level. He said it's due, right? to
No.
you looking down. Is that
Again, you're doing it again.
Or
I
is it
never
both? Is it
said
both?
the words, it is due to X.
You said you're slightly looking down.
Yes, when you look at the horizon, not the vanishing point. Those are two different subjects depending on the position of your eye. If it is horizontal, i.e. parallel to the ground, it will never, ever, ever, ever be the horizon.
It's a false horizon.
No, you're not listening.
Yes, when you're looking straight out.
Okay, now I'm
you
asking
can
a
always see your
question.
horizon because
Check
it's
it
getting
out.
blocked.
I'm gonna check your spatial reasoning. If you sat there and were able to, I don't know, just say if they were train tracks, right? Or say you're on a platform,
Yeah.
right? Say you're on the platform, right? The train tracks go straight out ahead of you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. to look at the ground, do you have to look down?
The question is, if I look forward,
Yes.
and I see the
if
ground.
if you look forward,
with
so
the
if
perfect
you had
conditions, hold on.
if you had
with the perfect
infinite
atmospheric
zoom,
conditions,
that doesn't physically make you look down. I'm sorry, but that's not how that works. We're talking about where your eyes are straight ahead and you had perfect zoom and instant clarity. Let's just say screw it. There's a wall at the horizon. Why not? At that wall on the horizon is a little spot, a little X. That's the exact, perfect, straight, absolutely amazing, right up to the center of your eye. Okay?
Okay.
If you're 5 miles away and you're looking straight dead ahead, where will your eyes be looking at those X's? Yes or no?
Now, are we outside or are we in a big building?
We can make it whatever you want.
Yeah, if you was in a big building, it's gonna be at your eye level. A big flat building is gonna be at your eye level, man.
Okay, great. So you acknowledge.
It's like a long ass hallway.
Wait for it. And on the long ass hallway, to look at the ground and where that wall in the ground, where the floor and the wall meet, do you have to look down?
No, if I'm directly in the center, if my eyes man, if my eyesight is directly in the center between the ground and the ceiling, yes, you'll see all if the hallway is long enough. Everything
I never said center.
To a singular point.
I never said
at your
center.
eye level, man. If your eye level is right in between,
you're not paying attention. I never said center. That is you. You just said center. I said that the two little X's are perfectly perfectly in the middle of your eye if you're looking dead ahead.
Same thing. Okay.
It's not the same thing. You can't claim it's the same thing because I never gave the dimensions of the wall.
God. Okay.
Now here's the thing. Say you're, I don't know what. How tall are you?
I'm 6'2".
Yay. Okay, so let's see now. Real quick math. So about what? 5'10" ish is right where your center of your eyeballs.
Yeah.
Right.
About 5'10", 5'11".
Give or take, right? Okay. Now imagine on that wall, there's those marks at 5'10", 5'11", whatever fits, to be perfectly centered to your eyeball.
Right.
Okay. Now you just imagine that wall. You're standing right at that wall to where you can tell, right? Okay? That wall is on a pair of tracks. We'll call it the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And that wall rushes away from you 10 feet. Do you have to look down to see where the floor and the wall meet?
Of course.
Okay. Now, the wall appears to... Wait for it.
Start to rise, right?
Wait for it. Yeah, hold on. Wait for it.
Okay.
That still didn't negate you having to look physically down. Correct?
But as I go further back,
is it a yes or no, man?
And still see where the ground.
You're still not.
I mean, go ahead with your demonstration, bro. Go ahead.
So at 10 feet, you have to look down, even though if you see those tracks, you notice they kind of come up a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Good. Now keep going. You still have to look down every single time to see where that wall and the floor meet, no matter how small an angular size. Hold on. Train.
Now I'm gonna ask you a question. The further I go back,
I can't answer yet.
Okay, but you can hear it. The further I go back, do I have to raise my head more and more to see where the floor and the wall meet, or do I have to continue looking further down?
It will be down every single time. But
I have to raise my head more and more up as I go back.
No.
Right? Yes,
well,
you do.
Hold on. Wait. Well, hold on. Wait.
You're proving my point.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. Eventually, that line where the floor meets the wall is gonna rise up, man. It's gonna continue to rise up.
Wait.
And with nothing in your way, atmospherically blocking you, it's gonna rise to your eye level. No doubt.
He has a train nearby, and you're talking over his ability to respond to you. Can you please wait?
Okay, it's not going to get much quieter. It's slowing down. All right, check it out. By your logic, right, the further away you go, the more up you have to look.
Yeah, to a point.
Yeah, okay. No.
Yeah, until it reaches 0.02 degrees.
Yeah, infinite zoom.
Declination, acute angle.
Yep, infinite zoom.
0.02 degrees.
You are able to see that wall continuously. The difference is the same. You're still looking down at an imperceptible level. You will never physically look straight ahead and actually be looking at the horizon, the ground at your feet. It doesn't matter if it's... No, you will never do that. Because you can never do that. Because if you have to look down, if you're looking down at your fucking toes and you have to look down 10 feet from you, you're still having to look down. It will never actually rise to your actual eyes. Just as much as the sky isn't coming down at you.
It will go. Hold on. It will go to.
Are you saying that the sky is falling towards you?
The declination angle, acute angle of 0.02 degrees, and then you won't be able to see it anymore. So with my height, after about 3 miles, I will not be able to see the face of the floor anymore.
That doesn't change anything. That doesn't change anything. You saying just because you can't see it doesn't mean you're still looking forward. You're never actually looking at that front. You have to look down. It doesn't even matter if it's 0.00001 of a degree.
You're just wrong. That's it. You're just wrong. And you can look this up, man. This is not even. It's not even a flat Earth.
You're trying to use angular resolution. I'm not talking about angular resolution.
Yes,
angular resolution. We're not referring to. You're still not listening.
That's what colors your horizon. You know that, right?
Dude, I am not talking about angular. You switch the subject. and your size and angular resolution are not the same thing.
The subject is what is the horizon, right?
No.
And if it would rise
Actually,
completely
technically,
up
no.
to your eye level, that was the
It
subject.
does
Will
not do
the
that.
horizon appear? Will it be at your eye level? I
Oh,
said
time out.
yes.
You just said appear.
But all this is the horizon is an apparent thing. It's not real.
Oh, no. Because you don't have to have a horizon to see distant objects. Because you can change the size of an object and get the same results. So I don't know where you're trying to get that from. If I have a
just because something disappears from your field of view doesn't mean, you know,
it doesn't mean
that. That's a totally different thing than the horizon.
Then why'd you bring it up?
What you mean?
Don't
Why'd
worry,
I bring it up?
He brought up 5 different things in that last.
Oh
sentence,
no, that last little bit.
Hey, I get what you. Okay, I get what you're saying now. The vanishing point that things leave your vision. I'm talking about the vanishing line.
Do you understand that there's no difference between a vanishing point and a vanishing? Your true horizon is your horizon, no matter where you are, is always below your feet. Looking dead ahead, your eyes are not physically looking at a horizon. You're looking at a vanishing point that is above the horizon. Are you claiming that the vanishing point? If you're looking ahead, my vanishing point is exactly 6 feet in front of my vision, right? So let's see, for me it'd be 5'9", 5'10", whatever. I'm looking dead ahead. Dead ahead is my vanishing point. The horizon, which is what I'm standing on, the ground, will never meet that point.
Yeah, that's just wrong. That's wrong. That's fundamentally wrong.
You can say this.
If you was on a flat plane, I mean,
it doesn't work on a flat plane. It doesn't. It's the same thing, man.
Yes, it does. And there was nothing obstructing. There was nothing in the air. Everything.
Wait. So you're saying?
All right, guys. So this was gonna happen. I gotta take off, but I want their conversation to keep going, and I'm gonna keep recording it and let them do their thing. But I'm gonna end the stream, and I will upload this moments after they finish. It's gonna be my new fun thing. Once this conversation's going for a circle anyway, and I got some things I gotta take care of, so I'm gonna let them keep going. But I do appreciate everyone being here, even you, Dan. Tomorrow I'm gonna do this again, but we're definitely gonna change subject. I think we've gotten to the crux of this argument, especially the Toronto Center. So with that said, guys, I'm gonna get out of here, and we'll record them, and you'll see what the conclusion was for later. Peace.